What is theme in your novel, and how can you give your novel an outstanding theme? What's up, guys? Dave Jacobson here, best-selling author and book publisher. And in today's video, we're going to talk all about theme. We're going to talk about what it is, why it's important, and we're going to talk about, most importantly, how you can easily create one for your fictional novel. Now, if you're just joining us, this is the first time you watch this channel, what I'm doing in this channel is I'm giving you a step-by-step process for creating a fictional novel from start to finish. So if you're somebody who has writer's block, or you're someone who doesn't exactly know how to complete a novel consistently from start to finish, this series is for you. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and let's get into the heart of this particular video where we're talking all about theme. So as you can see here, I pulled up my step-by-step story development process. This is what we're working through step by step in this series, guys. Step one was to come up with a working title for your novel. I know it sounds counterintuitive and backwards, but it's the most important text associated with your novel, so you need to get it right before you even start writing. So, and then we provide examples throughout for every step, and we're talking about Harry Potter as our example, right? Then in step two, we loosely defined a protagonist and an antagonist in light of your title choice. Then in step three, we gave them a name. And then in step four, we gave our protagonist some qualities or traits that made him or her likable and easy to relate to and sympathize with, right? So you can see how we're doing this step by step. We're just kind of building this novel out step by step. And then, and then in step 10, I'm going to fast forward. If you haven't watched the other videos and you want to follow it step by step, go back and watch all the other videos in order, right? But I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. We're not going to do that all in this video. We're just going to talk about theme. Okay, but before we get to theme, we have to talk about some other things. There's a method to the madness in these videos, and you have to go through it step by step. Because if you don't know the misbelief, for example, of your protagonist, then you cannot write a good theme, okay? Because it's very much related to that. So first you have to give your protagonist a misbelief. What is a misbelief? Well, it's something that they're incorrect about regarding themselves or the world around them, you know, right? For example, in Harry Potter, the protagonist's central misbelief is, I am unwanted, powerless, and ordinary, right? He doesn't even know he's a wizard. Survival is something that happens to me, not something I can actually give meaning to. No one's coming for me. Adults decide my life and I endure it. Strange things around me that happen because I'm a wizard, and I don't even know that yet, only get me punished, right? So these are the misbeliefs of Harry Potter. And then in step 11, which we talked about in the last video, we give our protagonist an origin for their misbelief, okay? And we talked in the last video why this is important. If you don't have an origin or a backstory that explains your misbelief, then readers are just going to be confused, right? But once you give a backstory, and okay, I summarized it as our example of Harry Potter in the last video, and I'll just repeat that real quickly because it's important for step 12. The origin can look like this, right? Step 11, you'll have, like, once you complete step 11, which we talked about in the last video, you'll have something like this. The protagonist believes he is unwanted and powerless, that's the misbelief, because the people who raised him constructed his entire childhood around that idea. They hid his identity, erased his history, and treated his difference as something shameful, right? So once you complete that step, once you have a misbelief and an origin for the misbelief, now we're ready to write the theme for our story. And you'll see how they're related in just a second, okay? First, what is theme? Okay, let's talk a little bit about that for a second. So theme's not like, you know, wizards. Yeah, that's a theme in a very sort of superficial sense. But when we're talking about the theme of a novel, we're talking about something much deeper. We're talking about sort of the universal, deepest or deeper truth that is actually driving the story, right? So not every novel has a theme, but the best ones absolutely do. Think of theme as the truth that you as an author in telling the story are trying to shout from the rooftops, right? This is a statement, phrase, or sentence, or two sentences that is a universal truth that we want to convey through our story. Okay, so that's what theme is. Why is it important? Well, because it gives your story deep meaning, right? If you have this universal story that is being told, this universal truth that's being told through the actual events of your story, then that's going to give your story power and resonance, and it's going to make people, when they finish reading it, as long as it resonates with their heart and spirit, it's going to make them feel like, wow, that was a powerful book that just told this very important universal truth, right? So that's why we put themes in our books. Okay, so now let's move on to step 12. Okay, if you've already gone through all the other steps, the previous steps, you're ready to write your theme, okay? And I'm going to show you now how we do that. Okay, so now once you have your misbelief, you are going to state a powerful universal truth, which is the opposite, this is the key, of the lie or misbelief of the protagonist at the beginning of the story. Okay, so notice that you have to know what the misbelief of your protagonist is before you write the theme, because they're absolutely related to one another. Okay, so the universal truth that you just stated, which is the opposite of the lie or misbelief of the protagonist at the beginning of the story, is the theme of your story. Okay, it's the message at the heart of your story and the purpose of your telling your story. Okay, so let's go back and remind ourselves. Let's look at an example again. We're talking about Harry Potter as our example here, and we said that the misbelief of Harry Potter is I'm unwanted, powerless, and ordinary, right? And then we gave J.K. Rowling gave an origin of that misbelief, and we see it during the first chapters with the way his parents are treating him, right? The protagonist's misbelief 100% originates in his upbringing from the Dursleys. As a baby, he survives a catastrophic attack that kills his parents, but instead of being raised with love and truth, he is left with relatives who resent him. They conceal his magical abilities, and they lie to him about his parents' death and punish him for unexplained events, denying him comfort and treat him as an inconvenience, right? So that's why he has this misbelief. But now, let's see how that relates to the theme, okay? In Harry Potter, the universal truth that is opposite the protagonist's misbelief is this: a person's worth is not determined by how they are treated by those who fail to love them. It is revealed through their choices, courage, loyalty, and capacity to love others, right? This truth stands directly against the lie, notice, that the protagonist is unwanted, powerless, or defined by his mistreatment, okay? So this is giving the story power, right? The story's moral universe repeatedly supports this truth. Love has protective power. Friendship, which he meets all these friends at his wizard school, right, gives courage, shape. Humility matters more than fame. Choices matter more than status, blah, 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 right? So this truth just resonates through the entire series. And so we can see how it's the theme of Harry Potter and how it's so powerful. Guys, if you're getting value out of this and you're starting to learn more about how to write fiction, I highly encourage you to like, comment, and definitely subscribe. Hit that alert bell so you know when I put out the next video, and I'll see you next time.